I'm John Lanius. Welcome to The Room. The Room gives you access to Geniecast's top thought leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, business coaches, sports celebrities, and much more. Our guests will share ideas and concepts that you may use to better your organization and propel your teams. Our guest today is Zarna Garg. Zarna is a TikTok comedy sensation with over 30 million views. She has a headlining show at Caroline's on Broadway called Sorry, Not Sorry, and is also an award-winning screenwriter with a feature film and sitcom TV show in development. Hi, Zarna. Welcome to The Room.
Hi, namaste. Thank you so much for having me.
Namaste. It is so great to chat with you. I've really enjoyed over the last couple of days researching you, getting to know your comedy. So exciting what's happening with you. And it's my understanding that your daughter encouraged you to pursue a career in comedy. Is that how you got your start?
That's right. She did. I was very lost about what to do next after my third child started kindergarten. I was a stay-at-home mom for 16 years, living under a rock, just focusing on my job as a mom. And as I was trying to come out from underneath it, I was very confused what my next act should be. And my daughter stepped in and helped me figure it out.
So how does that conversation go? Is it literally like, Mom, you're funny, go do comedy? Like give us a sense of that moment.
My daughter, I've heard I'm funny my whole life. But if you're an Indian woman, that's may as well be the world's biggest curse. Like my parents were like, oh, we got stuck with the funny one. What do you do with funny? I mean, especially back home where I grew up in India, women are not encouraged to speak, let alone laugh and make controversial observations out loud. But my daughter has been watching me be the funny one her whole life. And every time I would want to do something new or different or creative, I would hit a wall and not know what to do. And she said, why don't you do stand-up comedy? And the thought hadn't even occurred to me. I come from a world where no married woman is doing what I do in the whole world. Because getting on stage and making fun of our mother-in-laws, which now seems like the most natural thing to me, it's not something we do culturally. But she's an American kid. She's born and raised in New York City. She's like, just do it, Mom. And she reached out to people, and there's a whole story behind this story. It's been profiled in the New York Times. It's her college essay. And she really got me started. Like, she pushed me to a point where I had to get on stage. Yeah.
So I love that you actually talked about the cultural norms of India and how women aren't really encouraged to speak. As someone who's done business in India back in the 90s, it was always very interesting to me. It was culture shock. But if you compare it to America in the 19th century, you saw that women were relegated to just being able to give birth. And now we're seeing these changes over the past century. So I'm curious how you tie that in for yourself, and also how you navigate the corporate entertainment space. Like, talk about your journey to now really impacting corporations, really in how you perform.
When I started stand-up comedy, I really thought 5 of my friends would come and watch me, and one open mic would be the beginning and the end of it all. What ended up happening and the evolution is completely unexpected, even for me, and I'm an optimist generally. My first open mic, I was supposed to have 5 people, 95 people showed up. And, it's because it's not been done. It's so rare that people were just curious. And with every open mic, I thought, I'm sure this is the last one. Or with every show, I'm sure I've exhausted every person who wants to hear about what an Indian auntie or an Indian mom has to say. But with every show that I did, the market grew. And then companies started approaching me and saying, we have a huge Indian employee base or an Indian student base. I get invited by universities, medical schools. We're so many Indian people that we're everywhere. And any business or entity that has a lot of Indian people now think of me as a potential entertainer. So that's how that started. And then soon it became, well, she's kind of resonating with the non-Indian crowd. It's the same stuff. More and more I started hearing that different cultures were relating to me. This was a surprise to me. For example, one of my biggest hit jokes on TikTok is that we as Indian people don't really say I love you. It's not a thing we do in our culture. First of all, most of us are getting arranged. So like no one's really thought about love. I myself haven't said it yet. I've been married 23 years to a really nice guy, but I mean, it's only been 23 years. What's the rush? But once I put the joke out there, I heard from so many different cultures that we don't say it either. It's not a thing we do either. And it started growing. My fan base and my viewership just grew exponentially from there. And from there, I started getting corporate shows, university graduations, high school graduations, because I'm a clean comedian. My comedy is very suited for teens and up. So one step at a time, it just kind of unraveled in a way that I would have never expected it to.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you mentioned the open mic. I mean, so your daughter says, okay, you're funny. And then you start going to open mics. For those that don't know, I mean, you just didn't go put an act together and then just show up. I mean, you've got to vie for those particular spots on the open mic night. What was that experience and starting with 5 minutes and failing or not failing? I'm curious to hear that part of the story.
So I had no idea what an open mic was, but a friend of mine said, if you want to be a stand-up comedian, you should go to an open mic. So I was like, okay, I'll show up. And it was run by a wonderful lady. And I said, I'm here on the recommendation of a friend, but I don't know what to do really. And she said, just go on stage and say funny observations, whatever you want to say, whatever you think is funny. And I was like, really? You want to hear what I think is funny? Okay, I went up. I had committed to my daughter that I would try it. So I went up and I looked around me. And I remember, I'll never forget, the first words out of my mouth were like, white people do this? Like, this is a job? You just get to stand up here and like make fun of your president and your prime minister in our case or anything, and that's okay. Like, the thought of it wouldn't have occurred to me in India. I would have been so scared that I was going to go straight to jail, because you never know who you're going to offend back home and who is in power and who isn't in power. It changes on the daily. So I just ranted about my life and mostly my mother-in-law, because naturally. And people found it really funny. I mean, and I got off the stage and the woman said to me, you're really funny, but you don't have jokes. So that confused me actually even more. I was like, but I just made everybody laugh. And she said, yeah, but they're not jokes. It's funny storytelling. So I came home and I rushed to where everybody must rush to when they're confused, Google. And I Googled, what is a joke? And I looked up the definition of a joke for the first time. And I was like, it's like a thing. It's a real art form. It's a real structure. And that's when my legal brain kind of started working, because I am a licensed lawyer in the state of New York. I mean, I've been trained to think a particular way. So once a formula emerged, I got to work to like, okay, how can I craft a story and take the best out of it and make a setup and a punchline? And that began the journey of like doing a 5-minute set. But it's very competitive in New York. There is no easy way to get on stage.
No, there isn't. And I think it's pertinent to this conversation because, one, if you're an entrepreneur or you want to start something new, going up and having that open mic, you could equate that to pitching a business. You could equate that, to asking for money from a family member. And if people don't feel a connection or they, don't get inspired necessarily by your message, well, then something is missed. And I also love that you mentioned how when you were in India, if you were saying some of the things that you'd be saying on stage, you'd be afraid, of who you might anger. And I think that's also important because, you and I both know that stand-up comedy on one level is really the last place of free speech. And I love that you shared that. Thank you so much. So, looking at your personal mission, which I think is great, I'm curious, how has your personal mission helped you accomplish the things that you're accomplishing?
So what started as a self-fulfillment journey, a desire to be a productive working member of the world, 16 years of being a stay-at-home mom can strip you of your self-confidence if you were like a superstar to begin with. And I wasn't. I was a normal working woman, but I stopped for many years. My daughter's encouragement got me started. But once I realized that no one else like me does this, that this voice is so rare, and that the reason I'm getting booked and the reason people are laughing and are riveted is because they just never heard a point of view of a brown woman the way I tell it, it became a much broader mission. Now I started asking myself, why aren't we laughing at our own lives? Like, why should that luxury evade us? And we're so many. If you think of brown women in the world, there's a huge population that you're addressing that doesn't do this. It's not just India, it's all the Middle Eastern. Like, I promise you, no woman in Afghanistan is going to get up and take a mic and make fun of her husband or her kid. Because culturally, we don't do that. We've been so scared all our lives. We just don't do that. And once I realized that how repressed this voice is, it became a much broader mission for my people, my women, and for my culture to make itself known in a happy way. In a very, I've been told that I'm a happy comedian. I'm really not here in America to trash the culture that I come from. It's more to highlight the joyous differences. I mean, we all have our quirks, and it's my job. And it's my job to write it in a delicate way that preserves the respect and the integrity of both cultures. American culture that has empowered me to speak these things, and Indian culture and the Eastern cultures that I come from that are a little more modest about these things. So I'm very careful in how each joke is framed and delivered and landed. And it's a much broader mission than just me getting back to work.
Well, your comments are spot on, and I love how you are impacting that in a positive way. And we're going to talk more about that. We'll be right back, more with Zarna Garg to speak on how diversity drives innovation. You're watching In the Room.
Shalom. I'm not your typical Indian woman. Let's face it, this bindi is a PR thing. I never even been to Queens. I am an immigrant though. I am an immigrant, and like all immigrants, I came to America with $9 in my pocket. 10,000 in the bank, but 9 in the pocket. I miss my family back home very much. My food, my culture, not enough to want to go back. But I'm very generous with the Facebook likes. Before I get off, I want to say one thing that I haven't said to my husband or to anybody. I love you. I love you guys for your laughter. I love you guys for coming here. And mostly, I love you guys for meeting the 2-drink minimums.
Funny stuff. We're back with Zarna Garg, comedian, screenwriter, immigrant, and mom. So, Zarna, as you know, comedians have had to move to primarily digital experiences due to the pandemic. So tell us how you navigated this change.
Okay, that's where my second kid comes in handy. This is the advantage of having so many kids as an Indian woman. I have so many kids. My first kid, my daughter, got me started. And then, as you know, last year, everything. I put so much work into getting this thing off the ground, getting a show at Caroline's, selling out that show, booking the future shows, and then the world just closed. Wow. And I was sitting there in a state of disbelief that I was like, Ganesh is against me. The Hindu gods are against me. What am I going to do now? And I was sitting there in my room thinking, it's just not going to happen. It's not meant to be. And my son, my 14-year-old son, who is a TikTok addict, like a lot of 14-year-old boys and girls, came up to me and said, Mom, I'm starting to see comedians on TikTok. I was like, okay, but what am I going to do? I'm not 14. I'm not twerking. I'm not singing. I'm not that young TikTok profile entertainer. And he said, no, Mom, I really think if you put one of your jokes up, you can see how people react. I thought for sure he's up to something bad, because if he's trying to help me, something's wrong. The cynical mother and me, I was like, there must be a trick in here somewhere. But, he insisted and persisted. He took a couple of my jokes. I had a lot of tapes from the year of performing and open micing and doing shows. And he took some of his favorite jokes that resonated with him, and made short clips of them and put them on TikTok and created an account for me. So I went to bed the first night when he put one or two jokes up, and I woke up the next day and there were like 200 or 300,000 views. And I was like, wow, so a lot of people watch this thing. But I thought for sure this is how everybody's first day on TikTok must be. Because, I had no idea what TikTok even was back then. And then he put one or two more up, and the next day we already had crossed 1 million views. So I started yelling at my kids, because that's my number one job. I was like, what are you guys doing all day? Just like refreshing this? Who's putting all these views on my thing? And I couldn't understand. The thought that all these kids all over the world, all these people all over the world were watching my material and forwarding it and sharing it didn't even occur to me. I'll be honest, I was so sure that my son was playing some trick on me. And then he showed me, he's like, look, Mom, you have 5,000 comments. Like 5,000 people have commented on how they relate to this or whatever. It's not me. The poor boy, I was yelling at him the whole first week. I was like, you're doing something. I know. Did you pay somebody? Are you spending money on this? Mother's brain goes in all these places. And he's like, I can't, even if I want to, Mom. And it really just grew organically and exponentially. Like overnight, we hit a few million views.
Yeah. And then when you talk about that growth, then, you cross paths with Kevin Hart. We saw that you recently appeared on Kevin Hart's newly launched comedy series on Peacock called LYFT Comics. So what was your experience about that show? Tell us about that show, and then also your experience on it.
So, once my TikTok account kind of became a thing and I decided that I was going to put my material, first of all, we were in a pandemic, okay? Traditional wisdom, if you talk to your comedian friends, will tell you, don't burn the material, don't put your material out there, right? But because of the non-traditional nature of my career and my trajectory, I was already in a state of like, if I don't put material out there, no one's going to come and see me anyway. It's not like a close-up photo of mine is going to drive traffic. I'm not that young, I'm not selling the beauty aspect. You need to see what I'm going to talk about to consider buying a ticket. Second of all, in a pandemic, I really had a moment of like, if my material is bringing people joy during the worst time in human history, what am I saving it for? What am I saving it for? Just let it go. So my son and I, we took every single clip we ever made, we sliced it up and we put it all out on TikTok, out into the real world. I figured that even if I'm making a few people laugh during this most dismal time in our lives, it's worth it. What am I saving it for? What ended up happening is that it started getting the attention of Hollywood, casting agents, industry people, because no one at that time when I started putting my material out, no one was putting so many of their jokes. Comedians were trying to build their TikTok audience, but they will do everything except put the actual joke out there because they're all like frantically trying to preserve the jokes for the real live shows. And I made the decision very early that I don't want to save any of it. If my jokes are bringing people joy, this is the job, this is the destiny, and we're going to let it all go. So I think I got a lot of attention from the industry because I was doing something that felt unusual at the time. Now everybody is doing it. A year later, everybody is doing it because the industry shifted in the last year. So Kevin Hart's people, LOL Network was one of the people. I've been approached by several major industry people through my TikTok account. LOL Network was one of them, and they tapped me to compete in the LYFT Comics comedy competition last year.
That's so great. And so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about diversity that I promised that we would before the break. You own your background so powerfully that I think it gives you, to your point, a really unique voice. So I'm curious, in your mind, how does diversity drive innovation, and especially for you in comedy?
I mean, I don't have a choice but to own my background. I was born an Indian woman. I'm going to die an Indian woman. Nothing and will change that. I'm a US citizen now, but I'm a proud Indian American citizen. I think diversity drives innovation in a few ways. One, I have to fit the normal paradigm and the normal structure of comedy. So as much as I am an outsider coming in, I'm doing everything, proving myself at every level that any comedian in the world, especially in New York, has to prove themselves. So for example, I have a headlining show, but I'm meticulous about meeting headliner level speed and punchlines. Like I understand very well that anybody who buys a ticket to come see my show or books me for a show is paying hard-earned money, and they expect a show. They're not seeing it because it's an Indian woman doing it. At the end of the day, you have to entertain. So a few things have come together. My rare perspective, meeting the standard conventional New York City level stand-up comedy standards, and combined with where the world has come in the last year, I think the awareness that we're missing all these voices has just surfaced, right? It's not just Indian women. It's like Black American voices, all these voices that were not getting the recognition they deserve. It kind of just all, I guess it's the right time and the right place. And because I speak to such a large audience, there's almost no company out there that doesn't have a huge Indian employee base. There's almost no school or college that doesn't have a lot of Indian kids. So all these things came together and became an engine for growth for my little effort.
Yeah, spot on, spot on. Our first guest on the room was Lily Gil Valletta, and she talked a lot about cultural intelligence. And I think that the world would be a better place if everybody at least understood the basics of all other cultures. And I think that you're hitting on that point exactly. So we're going to continue the conversation in just a moment. More with Zarna Garg and our 5 questions after this break. You're watching The Room.
Introducing Genie Talk, the latest offering from Geniecast, the #1 virtual event and experience company. With Genie Talk, you can connect with an expert on any subject, anywhere, at any time. It's a one-to-one conversation in a private video call on our safe and secure platform. It's not a presentation. It's not a speech. It's an engaging, informative conversation with an expert. Whether it's a C-suite, business author, or prominent speaker, they are on Genie Talk. Just search for what you're interested in, from leadership to marketing. to motivation, to diversity and inclusion, and more. Find one of our many experts on that topic. Then set up a time to meet virtually. We'll connect your calendars to find a convenient time. Next, we'll send a link, and then the virtual call happens. Payment is simple and easy through our easy-to-use platform. It's the ultimate fast, frictionless way to speak to an expert about anything, anywhere, anytime. That's Genie Talk.
Welcome back. We're talking with mom, award-winning screenwriter and stand-up comedian Zarna Garg. Every week on The Room, we ask our guests the same 5 questions. And Zarna, as someone who looks to share stories and connect with others, we hope you'll appreciate how we're collecting insights from our guests to provide a range of expertise for our audience to have a more significant impact in their daily life. Are you ready for your 5 questions?
I'm ready. Bring it on.
All right. Question number 1. What do you see as the biggest opportunities that businesses aren't taking advantage of in the world today?
I think businesses would do well to tap into the stay-at-home moms who are trying to get back to work. These women have unbelievable skills. I have looked around. I mean, my own business is testimony to it. We know how to adapt. We know how to bring all the skills that made the difference between life and death. As a stay-at-home mom, so many decisions you make. You're watching multiple kids sometimes. Those are real life skills. And I'm amazed at how untapped that entire skill set is. And it's a personal mission of mine to help moms get back to work and help companies understand the value of this skill set, this emotional intelligence that is not being tapped right now.
Absolutely. Question number 2, if you could have a conversation with one person from any time or anywhere, who would it be?
I mean, look, everybody's dream is to have a conversation with Oprah. Me too. She's the queen of conversation. I would love to sit across the table from her because I have watched her most of my existence and marveled at how she can make the most ordinary question extraordinary. I need to experience that myself. It's nothing she asks is so earth-shattering, and yet she makes it earth-shattering. And I really would love to sit across the table from her, watch her, and maybe learn something from how she does it.
That's great. What is one book every person in business should read and why?
I mean, I don't take much seriously in my life. I think for me, Seinfeld's book, Sign Language, is hilarious. It's a funny book. It's not a business book, but there are little business nuggets in it. I mean, I'll give you an example. He talks about how every time he put his money to work, it ran away. So now he lets his money rest and he works. And I think a lot of us who've been burnt in investments and who hasn't, right? Who hasn't made those mistakes? I remember laughing out loud when I read that and thinking, oh my God, this should be in every business book. Before you make any decisions, consider this point of view. So I love that book. I've read it many times. I find a lot of life lessons. Of course, the fact that he's an extraordinary businessman behind that book, a book that simple, tiny, and full of joy, just gives it that much more credibility. Sometimes the simplest rules and the simplest principles are the best.
Mm-hmm. Great suggestion. Number 4, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
My daughter saying, try stand-up comedy. She revolutionized my life with that suggestion. I mean, it would not have occurred to me, and no one in my world had ever considered. The people who come to watch my shows are coming to clubs and Zoom shows for stand-up comedy for the first time. Because as audience members, we've never considered it as a potential performance for us. We've never related to this art form. So she not only opened up a whole business and a whole avenue of revenue generation and art form for me, She opened up a whole world of entertainment for Indian people and for brown people that never considered going into a club before. I can't tell you how many times people have come up to me and said, this is a great concept, standing and telling jokes. You should do more of this. As if I invented stand-up comedy. And I just have to laugh because I don't know what to say. Like, they don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. But by her one suggestion, she revolutionized what it could be for all of us.
Absolutely. That's a great story there. All right. Last question. Question number 5. Why is a conversation better than a lecture?
Oh, because who wants to be lectured at? Everybody wants to be heard. A conversation is a two-way street. That's the best part of it. A lecture is like somebody is speaking, nobody's hearing what the audience has to say and what they're thinking. Nobody wants that. I mean, maybe some really technical conversation like medical school, yes, continue with the lectures. But everybody else, I mean, we want to be heard, and especially in a world filled with so much noise and isolation as this last year has revealed, we want to be heard more and more. This is why TikTok Live, Insta Live, YouTube Live, all these things are popular because people hop in and out of conversations and they love being a part of it. And it's totally understandable. Everybody is welcome to join my conversation except my mother-in-law. She can stay out.
Zarna, great responses. Today has been an absolute joy. I'd like to thank you for being a guest on The Room and sharing your thoughts and insights. Zarna, what would you like to leave us with today?
I would like to leave you with the idea that you're all welcome into Auntie Zarna's world. You're all welcome to check out all my social media handles, my profiles. I put a lot of material out there for free. I come from a place of extreme abundance. I share all my jokes. I want those jokes to reach whoever is interested in them. And, you know, I could sit here and sell tickets and buy. You don't need to do any of it. Just come join Auntie Zarna's world. We're brown women. We're happy women. And I want the world to see that side of us so badly that I'm giving it away. Just come be a part of it. How can I welcome everybody to join the revolution of the aunties? The only person, as I said, can you make sure this doesn't reach my mother-in-law? That's it. Everybody else is welcome. She stalks me on TikTok, so I have to be careful.
I love it. Zarna, again, it's been an absolute joy. Thank you again. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you to Geniecast.
Thank you. Join us next week when our guest will be the godfather of brainstorming, Chick Thompson. Chick has provided over 4,500 presentations and brainstorms. His latest creative adventure is founding Wagi Labs, a global social innovation incubator for kids' ideas. I'm John Lanius. We'll see you next time on The Room.